What's better than ending the week with a one-on-one conversation with Jeff Capel? How about this? Starting the week with a one-on-one conversation with Jeff Capel. It's the upside of doing an extra long sit-down interview with somebody. If you run a little podcast, video, whatever this is like I do, you can break it up into two because you say, hey, why release a 40-minute video when you could release two 20-minute videos? And let's be honest, who's got the attention span for a 40-minute video, right? So we did 20 minutes on Monday and 20 minutes today from a 40-minute conversation with Jeff Capel that I had last Thursday. Got all that. Hopefully you caught the part one of our conversation with Jeff Capel on Friday. There's great stuff talking about his reaction to the NCAA Tournament Selection Sunday snub, how he spent the next few weeks not watching basketball, which was pretty atypical for a basketball junkie like him. What he, his reaction to Bub Carrington's decision to go to the NBA draft and kind of what he saw through that process with Bub. And what else did we talk about that day? We talked about a lot of things. And some of the players returning and kind of how they announced their return and a lot of topics. I think the general reaction to Friday's video was that Jeff Capel is just a really interesting guy to listen to and to talk with. He's a smart guy. He's got a lot of interesting takes on things, and he's an interesting guy to get his perspective on things related to basketball, college sports, and probably I feel like a lot of topics. You could probably get into some pretty interesting conversations with Jeff Capel about them, and probably fortunately for our audience, maybe unfortunately for my own personal interest and enjoyment, we pretty much stuck to basketball in these conversations, but they were good conversations nonetheless. And it was one long conversation that we had last week, and here's part two of it today. What are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about some of the incoming transfers, Corhen and Damian Dunn, what those guys bring and what Jeff Capel's looking forward to with those guys. And then also just sort of the general outlook for the season. I mean, this is going to be a very different team than it was a year ago, primarily because they don't have Blake Hinson, but also because there might be some things that they can do a little bit better. And Jeff Capel's pretty optimistic about the group that they're putting together, the group they've already put together, and what they could end up becoming once the season arrives. So I hope you enjoyed Friday's conversation. I think if you enjoyed Friday, part one of the Capel conversation, you're going to enjoy today, part two of the Capel conversation. And it's not necessary to listen to part one in order to understand part two. I think there was kind of a nice little break, a little spot that we found to break them up. But you might want to check out part one. There's at least one or two references back to some things we talked in part one, because like I say, it's part of one big conversation. So I would recommend checking out part one because it's a good interview. And Jeff Capel is really interesting to listen to. But you could probably just dive in right now. I'm guessing if you watch today without having seen part one, if you watch part two without having seen part one, you're going to say to yourself, I want to go check out the other part now. So one way or the other, you're going to watch the whole thing, and we appreciate it. Listen, if you enjoy this interview with Jeff Capel, you enjoy the videos we put here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you won't miss any of our Pitt video content. These daily Morning Pitt videos, or our weekly live show on Wednesday nights, or anything that we do here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you like and subscribe. We appreciate it. And that way you won't miss anything. And, of course, check out the website. All these things happen at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news. All right, that's enough from me. Let's talk to Jeff Capel. Let's talk about Corhen coming in from Florida State, Damian Dunn coming in from Houston, and a whole lot of other things that I think you're going to be interested to hear. It's Jeff Capel joining us right here on the Monday edition of the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's interesting. Look, I made a list the other day of what you guys have done. I guess you would call it the portal era. I think probably back to like 2021 offseason. It seems like it went back dates too. And I think up until this year, you guys have brought in 8 guys, and like 7 of them have been like really good. You know what I mean? Some of the best players you've had. Do you feel like you've figured something out with how to approach here? I mean, why do you feel like you've been so successful?
Yeah, I just think with time. I mean, honestly, that's the truth. I mean, when I took this job, I expected it to go quicker. If you look at least the way I look, I can't think of how anyone else looks at it. But for me, I became a head coach at VCU at 27. My second year, we were in the NCAA tournament. We flipped it. I became a head coach at Oklahoma at 31. I took over a program that was marred with NCAA violations. They lost a lot of players to graduation transfer when I took the job. They had a recruiting class of 5, only 2 of them came. And so it was a rebuild. In year 2, we were in the tournament. In year 3, we were in the Elite 8. So in my mind, I'm arrogant enough to think, hey, I'm going to be able to flip it that quickly. You know, when I took this job, again, I knew it was in a bad place, but you don't know the totality of anything until you're there. One of the things that hurt me was, you know, when I took the job, was my experience at Duke. And what I mean by that is how we recruited at Duke. We didn't recruit a lot of guys. I had to get used to that when I went back there. So what I mean is that, perfect example, Coach K saw Tyus Jones in 10th grade. From that point on, we never recruited another point guard. He did not want to. I would bring up different guys. There were guys that would call me, McDonald's All-Americans a year ahead, that wanted to come. No, I won't Tyus. So there it was like, okay, who does coach want? Then we got to figure out how to get them. So you didn't have a wide net. When we went out recruiting, and a lot of times I was with Coach K, we were there to see, we go to Peach Jam, we may be there to see 3 guys, 4 guys. And so you're not watching everything. So when I took this job, all I knew was the high level players. I didn't know. And so, you know, we were able to get 3 good players that year, you know, when we signed. And then the next year we had some time, we were able to bring in Champagny and those guys. And then the world shut down. And, you know, it was really hard for us to recruit on a Zoom. I mean, really hard, because we had not had any success in the ACC. I hadn't my first 2 years. Really, since 2014, the program hadn't in this league. And so you had all of those years of that. And, you know, we got some guys during the pandemic through the Zoom stuff that just didn't pan out. It's not their fault, that's my fault. And fortunately, we were able to withstand that. And then as we were able to come out of the pandemic and start to get people back on campus, you know, we were able to get the right mix of guys. I think one of the key things was, after his first year, we were able to keep Jamarius, because his first year with us was rough. You know, he got hurt. He missed the first, I think, 3 or 4 games. He had these unbelievable leadership qualities, but it was difficult for him to lead because the stuff he was saying was right, but it was not received well by his teammates, to the point where he just kind of stopped. And so we were able to get the right mix that following year that allowed JB to be a leader, allowed him to, you know, for his stuff to rub off, but with Nelly to come in and to, you know, he knew the spirit of the program. He dreamt of coming here. You know, look, Blake was way better than we thought. I thought he'd be good, but he turned out to be amazing. Greg Elliott was really good. And so we were able to put those 3 guys with JB. Then you add the spirit of the twins, and that's when you had something really, really special. And then because of that, we were able to get Ish. We were able to go get Zach. You know, Papa fell in our lap. We were able to get him. But just as important, we were able to bring Blake back. I think that was really important. And so I think the guys having really good experiences here, the relationship, obviously success and winning, I think that's led to us being able to retain the guys that we want to retain all of them, but I know now that there's going to be guys that are going to go. They don't play as much as they want to. They want to maybe have a bigger role than they have here. I understand that. There's no hard feelings. I love them all. But the guys that we really needed to retain, we've been able to keep them. And then because of the success, we've been able to go out and get some guys.
Right. The guys this year, obviously, you know, you knew Damian because you had recruited Damian, right? I mean, you had tried to get him previously, and then you knew Cam because of what he did here. How much with Cam in particular? How much did that game here? I mean, were you like, hey, we want you to do that every game?
I was a big fan of his as a freshman. You know, we played him twice, and I just thought he was really. I loved his motor. I loved his physical tools. I thought he was a little bit more skilled than maybe he was able to show. I remember we played them down there when he was a freshman. It was right in front of our bench, and I remember this vividly. Like we were scrambling on defense, and the ball swung to him at the top of the key to the right side, and he shot fake, one dribble pull up, and made it. And I was just like, holy smokes! Like that's big for a freshman, big guy. For a big guy, period. But then a freshman doing that. Obviously, he had a terrific game against us here. And look, you're like I'm human like everyone. Like you hear rumors. So we were hearing stuff that Coach Hamilton may retire. You know, and I said to our staff, even before we played them and getting ready to play Florida State, watching film, you know, we talked as a staff, like if Coach Ham retires and this kid goes in the portal, like we got to get him. And as soon as he went into the portal, we called immediately. We were able to get him. You know, Damian is another guy. So it's interesting. When we got beat by Xavier in the NCAA tournament, that was on a Sunday. That Wednesday, me and my family went to the beach. And we were down there, and Damian went into the portal. And Damian's from Kinston, North Carolina, but he was living in Garner, North Carolina. So I drove up there and visited with him. It was during the period we could be out. And I spent 2 hours with him. And I thought we hit it off. I thought we connected. And then like the next week, he commits to Houston. And so I thought it was a wasted trip. And then it comes back around to us. And we were able to get him here on a visit. Both he and Cam came in together. You know, our guys did an unbelievable job with him, hanging out with him, spending time with him. You know, our staff did an unbelievable job with presentations and showing them how we feel like they would fit with what we do, but more importantly, how we can help them improve in the areas they can help us improve. And they believed right away. We were able to lock those two down, which were huge for us.
How does Damian fit with Jalen and Ish and even Brandon coming in?
Yeah, well, you know, he's this big, strong, physical guard. You know, 2 years ago when he was leaving Temple, everyone wanted him. And the guys at Houston love him. I mean, I know Coach Sampson. I replaced him in Oklahoma. He and my father, you know, go way back from North Carolina. He's from Lumberton. You know, I think my dad, they played against each other in high school. Coach Sampson always tells me how good my dad was, which is really cool to hear. And then their associate head coach, Coach Sampson's son, Kellen, played for me at Oklahoma, and he was a GA for me. And so we were able to get great intel. Like, they loved him. They didn't want to lose him, but they understood why. And so what he brings to us, man, he's this big, strong physical guard. He can really score. We know that he's been very well coached, you know, with Aaron McKee at Temple. I'm pretty sure he's learned a lot defensively, you know, from this past season with Coach Sampson. And even, you know, more with toughness and competitiveness. And so we think he brings scoring, being able to get the spots. He reminds me of JB, just this big, strong physical guard. He can play off the bounce. He probably shoots the ball to three better than JB just off catch. If you look at just his catch and shoot numbers, they're really, really good. And so he brings experience. He brings a guy that can score, a guy that's won, and a guy that we think will be really good for us.
It's interesting with Cam coming in. It seems like he's going to give you maybe more offense, you know, out of the post than you've had maybe like in 3 years or so. I mean, maybe going back to John. The last two teams were pretty similar, I think. You know, and a lot of three-point shooting and all that. Do you feel like you're going to be pretty different? You don't have Blake, but you do have this, like, maybe a scoring presence inside. Do you feel like this will be a different looking team than the previous couple of years?
Well, it's definitely going to be different because we don't have Blake. I mean, that's
it's big.
We were talking in here the other day as a staff. Blake came up to say goodbye, he and his family. And it's going to be so weird not seeing him out there shooting from the logo. I think we are going to be different, but we're still going to have shooting. I still feel really good about us shooting the basketball. Now, we may not have a guy that makes 110 threes, but I think every guy we'll put out there can shoot. Every one of them. Cam can shoot the basketball. Papa can shoot the basketball. Obviously, Guillermo can shoot the basketball. Jorge, all of these guys can shoot. I think all of our returning guys will be better. I think they will be better because they'll really work on their games this summer. They'll be even stronger and things like that. Cam, he does give us a different presence inside. If you look at it, he was, I think, 9-4 at Florida State, and that was in about 21 minutes a game because of the way they play. They sub in and out and things like that. For us, we felt like last year we were one of the best offenses in the country. We were a top 30 offense, and a big part of that was shooting the basketball. Where we struggled was our 2-point field goal percentage, posting up, and then our percentage of finishing offensive rebounds. Cam is in the top 90 percentile in all three of those areas. And so we feel like he can help us be better there. Cam also at Florida State didn't have shooting. And so they had no space. And so he'll have more space. With the way they defend, they switch a lot. So I think his rebounding numbers were low when you look at someone 6'10", athletic like he is, but a lot of times he was away from the basket defensively because they switch. He's guarding guards, he's guarding on the perimeter. So we think those numbers, will go up as well. I think he's really talented, and I think he's going to get better and better. He'll be here for the first session of summer school, so he'll be here next week. He's ready to get to work. T.O. told me, he texted him the other day, talking about, can you help me get better defensively? I don't know if I've ever heard a kid ask that question. And so it's exciting because he understands who he is and he wants to be really good. He's been coached unbelievably well by Coach Hamilton down at Florida State, and we're excited to get him and get to work with him.
It's interesting when as you talk about the projections and what you feel like he can do here as opposed to what he was doing at Florida State. It reminds me of Greg Elliott. We feel like if he gets more time, he's going to be able to produce more ish. If he feels like he's not the main guy, he's going to be able to increase that efficiency. It kind of goes back to the question I asked you earlier about why you guys have been successful in the portal. Do you feel like you've developed a pretty good ability to project what these guys can do if you fit them into different kinds of roles and what they were doing?
Yeah, our staff has done an unbelievable job. I mean, I think one of the biggest things a few years ago, I fought hard, really, really hard to add a position. And that was the position that Kyle Saplicki fills. And it was more so, I knew what this thing was going towards with the portal and with the NIL, and I wanted to have someone to kind of help guide us through that. And so between Kyle, Jake Pursuti before he left, and now Billy Hubley, and then Robert Blos, who we hired from a GA to a full-time position, those guys do an unbelievable job of watching throughout the season and looking, and they're into the analytical stuff. I'm getting there. I'm getting better with that. But they were able to look at stuff. So Greg is a perfect example. Obviously, Jake had the relationship with him and was around him. But we knew, especially if you look at not just percentages, but when you look at specific things. So with Greg, he shot the ball very well at Marquette. But if you look specifically at just his catch and shoot, it was way better. And so we knew if we put him around the guys that we thought that we would have, it just put him in that role where, this is all you do, man. You're just going to catch and shoot. You're going to be a smart defender. He's a really good team defender. He's a great communicator. You can have success. With Ish, when we looked at him, we obviously saw that he scored and rebound. But one of the things we talked to him about was that you didn't do it in an efficient manner, scoring, if you look at your percentages. When we looked at his catch and shoot threes, they were really good. And as we, dove into the film, he had to shoot a lot. And so a lot of times he was taking tough shots, contested shots, shots at the end of the shot clock. That can lower your percentage. And we felt like that he could score at our level, but we felt like he would be able to do it in an efficient manner. I think the one that's kind of the outlier is Blake, because if you look at his 2 years at Ole Miss, he made 45 threes one year, 46 the next year. So a lot of his stuff was mid-range, coming off curls at the elbow and things like that. And, when he got here, we saw that he could shoot the basketball, but the volume of it. And when he got here, we started working with him, and as he started to get in better shape, man, this kid can really shoot. And I'll never forget, we're in a practice, we're in the back gym, and we're pushing it down on the break. We were doing 5-on-5, and I think Nelly or JB hit a head to him, and he didn't shoot. And I stopped practice, and I was like, yo, man, shoot that. Like, that's my shot. That's our shot. I never had to tell him that again. And just the confidence in his work, the work that he put in, but the confidence that I think we put into him, you know, and then the green light, it turned into something that was magical. And so we do think we have a formula to kind of look and to see and to dive deep into it and to look at the numbers and to really break things down. And I think the biggest thing that we've tried to look at, Chris, is how do they fit with us? Are they going to be really good teammates? And, you know, are they going to be about the team and not as much about the, well, I want them to be about themselves, but they have to be about the team. And that's where we've been lucky. The past couple of years, we've been able to get guys that have been all about our team, and it's the reason why when we've hit moments where we've struggled, we've been able to come out of it because guys are all in on the team.
Well, you talked earlier about how, you know, last year maybe the success you have doesn't happen if you don't hit the adversity early. It feels like that happened like 2 years in a row, right? I mean, 2 years ago you guys had. So maybe this will be the year you just hit the ground running and this could be adversity.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I mean, obviously we want to. You know, you never want to lose, but I know that we have to grow. Next year's team will be different. It'll be the first time without Blake in 2 years. And we're going to, like, we need guys to step up. Now, I think they will. You know, I thought Guillermo took a step this year. We need him to take a leap next year. And he's ready for it. I mean, he's really, really ready for it. Had unbelievable meetings with him after the season about that. I think we'll get a full year healthy of Corhen. He was never healthy last year. And so to get that, Jalen as a sophomore, you look at from January 20th on, you look at his numbers overall, but especially from January 20th on, you know, and I think he's going to have, I think Ish will be even better. I think a guy that is ready to take a big jump is Zach. You know, Zach is such a good dude that at times I thought he played the back seat a little bit. And it's time for him to not do that. Like, we need him to be a guy. And when he did that at times this year, whether it was Virginia Tech here, Oregon State, you know, at Louisville, his imprint on the game can be huge because he can do it defensively, rebounding, offensive glass, and things like that. Getting Papa back will be huge. It gives us another physical presence, a guy with an incredible motor. And so we're excited about the returning guys, but we know that it's going to take some time because guys are going to be in different positions. You know, 2 years ago, we lost our second, third, fourth, and fifth leading scorers. And so I'm sure there were questions, you know, they were really old. How's it going to be? Can they do it again? And this year was completely different because now we did it with two 18-year-olds instead of 4 23 and 24-year-olds. But the big thing is Blake. Like, how do you replace that? We will not have one guy that replaces it, but I think we'll have other guys step up and we'll be able to do it collectively as a group.
I find a lot of that stuff really interesting. I find a lot of the stuff that, I think all 20 minutes today and all 20 minutes from Friday, the whole 40-minute conversation, I think it was really interesting stuff with Jeff Capel, and we certainly appreciate him joining us. Some of the things about looking at, they're playing such a, like I don't want to call it like Moneyball because that's become such a cliche, but the way they're looking almost for, again, I don't want to call it market inefficiencies or something like that, but they're looking at Cam Corhen's game and they're saying, okay, he was doing a minimal amount of some of these things at Florida State, but we think he could do more of these things here at Pitt, and he can fill some gaps that we had. That we did some things really well last year, but there's some areas where we struggled or didn't perform at a high level, and these are the things exactly that he does. I think it's really interesting, and I think the proof is sort of in the pudding of how they've done with transfers. I mean, we talked about this, I think, last week or the week before, that Pitt has signed, I think, 8 transfers out of the transfer portal prior to this year, prior to Cam Corhen and Damian Dunn, and like 7 out of those 8 have been really good players. I mean, big-time contributors to the success Pitt has had over the last 2 seasons. And a lot of it has come by sort of finding those areas that they think other people are overlooking, or things that a guy does something well, but he doesn't do a lot of it. but in Pitt's system, he could do more of it and just blossom. And it's happened. I mean, Greg Elliott put up 10 points per game. You know what I mean? Blake Hinson, obviously. And I think they have the same sort of projections. I mean, Ishmael Leggett is another great example. And I think they have the same sort of projections for Cam Corhen, definitely, and also Damian Dunn to a certain extent. I think there were some interesting anecdotes there about the connections with Damian Dunn and just the overall outlook for the season. I think Jeff Capel, I got a real sense of excitement from Jeff Capel, maybe more so than we've seen in previous years. I mean, I think last year they were pretty excited about what they were going to be. The year before, I think they were optimistic, but cautiously optimistic, because they were kind of optimistic the year before that, and it crashed and burned. But I think they were optimistic, if not cautious, albeit cautiously so, 2 years ago. And I think they were pretty optimistic last year. And I think there's a lot of optimism this year. I think they're excited about what Jalen Lowe is going to become as a sophomore. I think they're excited about Ishmael Leggett coming back for a second year. You could hear what Jeff Capel said about the Twins. Jeff Capel and the Pitt staff are higher on the Diaz-Graham twins than anybody else is. Any of the fans, I know that for sure, or anybody on the outside. Everybody's pretty, I don't know about down on those guys, but I think Jeff Capel's far more up on them than the rest of us are. That's okay. That's part of it. He's a coach. He should be up on them, right? But I mean, and then his comments about Zach Austin, how excited he is about Zach Austin, what Austin might be able to do. It's going to be a different team. Like I said, like Capel said, like we've been saying for a long time. We know that. It's just a question of how it's going to work and how it's going to come together. And kind of like I asked Capel there, if they can, maybe hit the ground running and avoid some of the early season struggles that they've run into the last 2 years. Albeit they've run into early season struggles for different reasons the last 2 years. But if they could avoid those this year, who knows? Maybe they can go out and win a few games. Jeff Capel certainly seems to think so. If there was one takeaway from this whole thing, from the whole conversation that we had with Jeff Capel, split up into two parts here, it was that he's pretty optimistic, that he thinks he's got some things figured out, and that this team could win some games. So we'll see. I hope you liked that video, though. Or I hope you liked that interview. And if you did, you should like that video, like this video right here, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you won't miss any of our Pitt video content. All day, every day. That's the thing I say about the website, the all day, every day. People were talking about Pitt sports at Panther-Lair.com, but every day we've got some Pitt video content for you right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So like this video and subscribe, and that way you won't miss any of it. And then if you enjoyed this interview and you have some thoughts on what Jeff Capel said, let's go talk about it over on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. That's the website below. That's where you should hang out. We'd love to see you there. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope you had a great weekend. I hope you enjoyed these conversations with Jeff Capel. If you have a friend who's a Pitt basketball fan, send them the link. Recommend that they watch the video. I think they'll enjoy it as well. I know I enjoyed doing the interviews, and I hope you enjoyed checking them out. So, hope you had a good weekend. Hope your Monday gets this week off to a great start, and we will catch up with you tomorrow for more Pitt talk right here on the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.